The silence in space was wrong. Admiral Zarathol knew this as her fleet dropped out of hyperspace near Kepler Station. 3 weeks had passed since the mining outpost sent its last message. 3 weeks since the Vorkith invasion fleet had swept through this sector like a storm of death and destruction. Her long, blue fingers tapped against the command chair of her flagship. The Altarian had seen many battles in her 200 years of life. She had watched entire worlds burn under Vorkith plasma fire. She had pulled survivors from the wreckage of stations just like this one. But she had never seen a station survive. A direct Vorkith assault. "Admiral, we're picking up something strange," her sensor officer reported. The young Altarian's voice carried confusion and disbelief. "The station is still there. And it's still powered." Captain Elena Rodriguez stood beside the Admiral on the bridge of the human vessel UCS Defiant. The dark-haired woman had joined this rescue mission expecting to find nothing but debris and bodies. Her brown eyes narrowed as she studied the tactical display. "That's impossible," Rodriguez said. "Intelligence reported a full Vorkith battle group hit this system. 50 ships at least. No mining station could survive that kind of firepower." Admiral Zarathol's large black eyes focused on the main screen as Kepler Station came into view. The massive structure hung in space like a metal flower, its rotating sections still spinning slowly. The station's lights flickered in patterns that suggested active systems. But something else caught her attention. "What are those objects around the station?" she asked. The sensor officer worked frantically at his console. His face went pale as the readings came in. "Admiral, those are ship hulls. Vorkith ship hulls. I count at least 12 dreadnoughts, all destroyed." A hush fell over both bridges as the full scope of the scene became clear. The space around Kepler Station was a graveyard of alien warships. Massive Vorkith dreadnoughts drifted like broken toys, their black hulls torn open and venting atmosphere. Some had been cut cleanly in half. Others looked like they had been hit by weapons far more powerful than anything a mining station should possess. "How is this possible?" Rodriguez whispered. Kepler Station had minimal defenses, a few point defense guns and basic shields. Nothing that could scratch a Vorkith dreadnought. Admiral Zarathol had commanded fleets for decades. She had seen the impossible become possible in war, but this defied all logic. A single mining station had somehow destroyed an entire Vorkith battle group. The implications made her head spin. "Take us in slowly," she ordered. "All ships, battle stations. If whatever did this to the Vorkith is still active, I want to be ready." The combined fleet moved carefully through the debris field. Up close, the destruction was even more impressive. The Vorkith ships hadn't just been destroyed. They had been systematically dismantled. Precise cuts showed where mining lasers had sliced through armor plating. Massive holes suggested explosions from improvised weapons. One dreadnought looked like it had been crushed by some kind of gravity weapon. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission." From the station, the communications officer announced. "Put it through," Zarathol ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing the interior of what appeared to be Kepler Station's command center. But it looked nothing like any command center either officer had ever seen. Cables ran everywhere in chaotic patterns. Computer terminals had been ripped apart and rebuilt into strange configurations. Weapons systems that clearly didn't belong. On a mining station hummed with power. In the center of this mechanical chaos sat a human male. He looked to be in his early 30s, with short brown hair and tired blue eyes. His uniform was wrinkled and stained with grease and sweat. Empty. Coffee containers littered the desk around him. He didn't look up from his work as he spoke. "You're 3 weeks late," he said in a flat, exhausted voice. "Hope you brought more ammunition." Captain Rodriguez stepped forward. "This is Captain Elena Rodriguez of the UCS Defiant. Identify yourself." The man finally looked up from his console. His eyes were bloodshot and his face was covered with 3 days of stubble. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison, Chief Engineering Officer, Kepler Station. Though I guess I'm pretty much everything officer now. Commander Morrison, Admiral Zarathul said, her voice gentle despite her shock. What happened here? Our sensors show massive Vorkith casualties. How did you survive? Morrison turned back to his work, his fingers flying over controls that had been jury-rigged beyond recognition. We fought back. Lost most of the crew in the first wave, but we made them pay for every inch. Turned this mining station into something they weren't expecting. Rodriguez looked around the command center through the video feed. Commander, where is the rest of your crew? Our records show Kepler Station had over 200 personnel. Morrison's hands paused for just a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. Dead, most evacuated when the first attack came, but some stayed to help me rig the defenses. Billy Carter held engineering until a plasma blast took out his section. Lisa Park kept communications running until her console exploded. Dr. Alex Stone treated wounded until the medical bay was hit. The human's voice carried a weight that made both commanders uncomfortable. This man had watched his friends die while fighting an impossible battle, yet somehow he had won. How? Admiral Zarathul asked simply. Morrison looked up again, and for the first time, something like pride flickered in his tired eyes. Human stubbornness, I guess. The Vorkith expected easy prey. They got miners who refused to die quietly. Before either commander could respond, alarms began blaring throughout Morrison's command center. New contacts appeared on his tactical display, and his casual attitude vanished instantly. Looks like the party's not over, Morrison said, his hands moving to weapon controls. I've got another Vorkith battle group coming in. 15 ships this time. You might want to back off unless you're planning to help. Captain Rodriguez felt her heart rate spike. 15 Vorkith ships were more than her small escort fleet could handle, especially after seeing what a full battle group had done to the area. Commander Morrison, she said urgently, we need to evacuate you immediately. Our fleet can't hold against that many enemy ships. Morrison's laugh was bitter and tired. Captain, I've been holding this line for 3 weeks. I'm not about to abandon it now because things got a little more interesting. Admiral Zarathul watched this human with growing amazement. The man was clearly exhausted, probably running on stimulants and willpower alone. His station was damaged and his weapons were improvised. Yet he was preparing to face another impossible battle with the same calm determination he might show fixing a broken coffee machine. You can't be serious, Rodriguez said. Those are Vorkith dreadnoughts. Even with whatever modifications you've made, you can't fight 15 capital ships alone. Morrison looked directly at her through the screen. His blue eyes held a hardness that came from seeing too much death and refusing to give up anyway. Captain, 3 weeks ago, I was just an engineer who fixed broken mining equipment. Today I'm the only thing standing between those ships and 7 inhabited systems with 2 billion people. So yeah, I'm serious. I'm going to fight them. And I'm going to win. The tactical display showed the incoming Vorkith fleet growing closer. Morrison turned back to his controls, dismissing the rescue fleet entirely. His voice was calm and professional as he began his battle preparations. Helen, bring all weapons online. Charge the main mining array to maximum power. And brew another pot of coffee. This is going to be a long day. Admiral Zarathul and Captain Rodriguez could only watch in stunned silence as one human prepared to face impossible odds with nothing but determination and whatever weapons he had managed to build from mining equipment. The battle for Kepler Station was about to begin again. 3 weeks earlier, Kepler Station had been a peaceful mining outpost on the edge of human space. The massive structure spun slowly in the darkness, its workers busy extracting rare metals from nearby asteroids. Life moved at the steady pace of shift changes and equipment repairs. Jake Morrison had been happy with his simple job as an engineer. He fixed broken mining lasers, kept the air recyclers running, and made sure the artificial gravity stayed stable. It was quiet work that let him think and tinker with new ideas. His small workshop was filled with half-finished projects and modified tools that worked better than the original designs. The warning came during the night shift. Station Commander Patricia Wells received the message in her private quarters and immediately called an emergency meeting. Morrison found himself crowded into the command center with dozens of other senior staff members. "A Vorkith invasion fleet is heading this way," Commander Wells announced without introduction. Her voice was steady, but her face was pale. "Intelligence. Estimates 50 ships, including at least 12 dreadnoughts. They'll be here in 6 hours." The room erupted in worried voices. Mining stations weren't built for war. They had basic shields to protect against asteroids and small pirates, but nothing that could stop a military assault. Everyone knew what happened when the Vorkith attacked civilian targets. No survivors, no mercy. "We're evacuating immediately," Wells continued. "All non-essential personnel will board the transport ships. Essential crew will maintain life support and mining operations until the last possible moment." Morrison raised his hand. "Commander, what about our defenses? Can we modify the mining equipment?" Wells shook her head. "This isn't a movie, Morrison. We're miners, not soldiers. Our job is to stay alive long enough for the military to arrive." But Morrison was already thinking. He had spent years working with the station's industrial equipment. The mining lasers were powerful enough to cut through solid rock. The magnetic fields used to process ore could be incredibly strong. The explosives used for asteroid mining were military grade. Maybe they couldn't fight like soldiers, but they had tools that soldiers didn't. The evacuation began immediately. Transport ships arrived within hours, taking away families and non-essential workers. Morrison watched them go from the observation deck, feeling a mix of relief and abandonment. The station grew quieter as each ship departed. Commander Wells was supposed to leave on the final transport, but she pulled Morrison aside first. "Jake, I'm putting you in charge of the skeleton crew. Keep the lights on until we can send proper military support. What about fighting back?" Morrison asked again. Wells sighed. "Jake, I know you're creative with machinery, but this is beyond anything we can handle. Just keep everyone alive." After she left, Morrison stood alone in the command center. The massive space felt empty with only 12 people remaining on the entire station. He looked at the skeleton crew: Billy Carter from maintenance, Lisa Park from communications, Dr. Alex Stone from medical, and 9 others who had volunteered to stay behind. "So what now, boss?" Billy asked. The older man had worked maintenance for 20 years and knew every pipe and wire in the station. Morrison walked to the main console and pulled up the station's technical specifications. His mind was already racing with possibilities. "We're going to do something stupid," he said. "How stupid?" Dr. Stone asked. The middle-aged woman had seen enough injuries from mining accidents to know that Morrison's ideas could be dangerous. "We're going to turn this mining station into a fortress," Morrison replied. "And we're going to make the Vorkith regret coming here." The next 4 hours passed in a blur of frantic activity. Morrison had everyone working on different modifications. Billy and his team began rerouting power cables to redirect energy from life support to the mining lasers. Lisa worked on isolating the communication systems to prevent enemy jamming. Dr. Stone helped convert the medical bay into a damage control center. Morrison focused on the station's AI system. Helen had been designed to coordinate mining operations, tracking asteroid movements and optimizing laser patterns. But Morrison realized she could do much more. He began feeding her military tactical data, teaching her to recognize attack patterns and predict enemy movements. "Helen, can you calculate firing solutions for the mining array?" he asked. The AI's pleasant voice responded immediately. I can adapt mining coordination protocols for defensive targeting. However, the mining lasers are not designed for combat use. What would we need to change? Morrison asked. Increased power flow, faster rotation mechanisms, and improved cooling. Systems. Also, the targeting computers would need military-grade programming. Morrison smiled. Show me what you need. While Helen provided technical specifications, Morrison worked on his most ambitious project. The station's ore processing facility used powerful magnetic fields to separate different metals. If he could reverse and amplify those fields, they might create electromagnetic pulses strong enough to disable enemy ships. The work was dangerous. They were modifying systems that had never been designed for such use. One mistake could destroy the station before the Vorkith ever arrived. But Morrison had always been good at seeing how different machines could work together in new ways. Jake, you need to see this. Lisa called from the communications station. She had been monitoring long-range sensors and her face was grim. The Vorkith fleet just dropped out of hyperspace. They're 2 hours out and moving fast. Morrison felt his stomach tighten. 2 hours wasn't enough time to finish all the modifications. They would have to go to battle with half-completed weapons and untested systems. How many ships? He asked. 47 confirmed contacts. Looks like the intelligence report was accurate. Morrison turned to address his small crew. These people had volunteered to stay behind knowing they might die. They deserved to know what they were facing. Everyone listen up, he said. We've got 2 hours before the Vorkith arrive. Our modifications aren't finished, but they're better than nothing. I'm not going to lie to you, our chances aren't good. If anyone wants to take an escape pod and run, I understand. Nobody moved. Billy Carter spoke for the group. We didn't stay behind to run at the first sign of trouble, Jake. What do you need us to do? The final preparations were intense. Morrison had to make difficult choices about which systems to prioritize. The mining lasers got the most attention since they were their primary weapons. The magnetic pulse generators were secondary. The shield modifications were last because they took the most time. With 30 minutes remaining, Helen announced that she had finished learning the military tactical programs. I can now predict enemy attack patterns with 70% accuracy, she reported. That's better than most human gunners, Morrison said. How are the laser arrays? All 6 primary mining lasers are online and ready for combat targeting. Power efficiency is at maximum sustainable levels. Morrison checked the other systems. The magnetic pulse generators were untested but functional. The shield modifications were only half complete. The improvised missiles were ready but limited. In number, it wasn't much, but it was what they had. Jake, they're here, Lisa announced, through the main view screen. The Vorkith fleet appeared like a swarm of black insects against the stars. The ships were massive and heavily armed, designed for one purpose: destruction. Morrison counted the vessels and felt his heart sink. 47 ships, just as Lisa had reported. Helen, are you ready? He asked. All systems standing by for combat operations, the eye replied. Morrison took a deep breath and activated the station's general alarm. The quiet mining outpost transformed into a fortress preparing for war. Lights dimmed as power flowed to weapons. The gentle hum of life support was replaced by the angry whine of charging laser arrays. The Vorkith had expected to find helpless miners. Instead, they found humans who refused to die quietly. The battle for Kepler Station was about to begin, and Morrison intended to make it a fight the galaxy would remember. The first Vorkith attack came without warning. 3 dreadnoughts broke from the main fleet and charged toward Kepler Station with weapons blazing. Their massive plasma cannons lit up space with deadly green fire, each shot carrying enough energy to destroy a city block. Morrison watched from the command center as the enemy ships closed in. His hands moved across the modified controls with practiced ease. even though he had never fought a space battle before. Helen's tactical display showed the approaching ships as red dots growing larger by the second. "Billy, are the mining lasers?" "Ready?" Morrison called out. "Ready and waiting, boss," Billy replied from the engineering station. "Power levels are at maximum." The Vorkith ships opened fire when they reached optimal range. Plasma bolts streaked across space toward the mining station. Morrison felt the deck shake beneath his feet as the first shots hit their shields. The protective barriers flickered, but held. "Helen, target the lead ship," Morrison ordered. "Fire when ready." The station's main mining laser pivoted on its mounting and locked onto the nearest Vorkith dreadnought. The massive beam weapon had been designed to slice through solid rock, but Morrison had modified it for combat. When it fired, the coherent light cut through space like a sword of pure energy. The Vorkith captain had expected weak defensive fire from a mining station. Instead, the laser beam punched through his ship's armor like it was made of paper. The dreadnought's hull split open, venting atmosphere and debris into space. "Direct hit," Lisa announced from communications. "The lead ship is severely damaged." But the other two Vorkith ships kept coming. They adjusted their attack patterns, trying to avoid the mining laser's arc of fire. Morrison realized that one weapon wouldn't be enough against multiple enemies. "Helen, bring the secondary lasers online," he ordered. "Target both remaining ships." The station's other mining beams swiveled toward the attacking Vorkith vessels. Morrison had never coordinated multiple weapons before, but Helen's tactical programs made it possible. The AI calculated firing solutions faster than any human could think. The second Vorkith ship took a direct hit to its engine section. The explosion was visible even from the station's distance, a brief star of destruction that left only floating wreckage. The third ship tried to retreat, but Morrison wasn't about to let it escape. "Fire the magnetic pulse," he ordered. Billy activated the modified ore processing system. The powerful electromagnetic field that normally separated different metals was reversed and amplified. The invisible pulse raced across space and struck the fleeing Vorkith ship. All of its electronic systems failed at once, leaving it drifting helplessly. "Clean up that last ship with the mining laser," Morrison said calmly. "Then get ready for the next wave." Dr. Stone looked up from her medical station with amazement. "Jake, we just destroyed 3 Vorkith dreadnoughts. No one's ever done that before." Morrison checked the tactical display. The main Vorkith fleet was still approaching, but more cautiously now. Their commanders had seen what happened to the first attack group and were adjusting their strategy. "Don't celebrate yet," Morrison warned. "We've got 44 ships left to deal with." The second attack came an hour later. This time, the Vorkith sent 6 ships from different directions, trying to overwhelm the station's defenses. Morrison realized that his mining lasers couldn't target multiple angles at once. The station's design limited his firing arcs. "Billy, can we rotate the entire station?" Morrison asked. "The main rotation system is still functional," Billy replied. "But if we spin too fast, we'll lose artificial gravity in the outer sections." "Do it," Morrison ordered. "Lisa, warn everyone to grab something solid." The massive mining station began to rotate faster than it was designed to. The centrifugal force made everyone feel heavier, but it also gave Morrison's weapons new firing angles. As the station spun, the mining lasers could target ships from multiple directions. The Vorkith ships found themselves facing a spinning fortress that could shoot in all directions. Morrison coordinated the weapon's fire with the station's rotation, creating a deadly dance of destruction. One by one, the attacking ships fell to the improvised weapons, but the battle was taking its toll. The station's shields were weakening under constant fire. Several hull sections had been breached, and the crew was working frantically to seal the damage. Morrison realized they couldn't keep fighting like this forever. "Helen, how long can we maintain this level of combat?" he asked. At current power consumption rates, approximately 4 hours, the AI replied. However, weapons efficiency will decrease as systems overheat. Morrison studied the tactical display. The Vorkith fleet was regrouping for another attack, but they were being more careful now. They had learned to respect the mining station's unexpected firepower. That's when Morrison noticed something interesting. The Vorkith ships were communicating with each other using quantum transmissions. He could see the data streams on his sensor display, encrypted messages flowing between the enemy vessels. "Lisa, are you seeing this quantum chatter?" he asked. Lisa nodded. "They're coordinating their attacks through some kind of advanced communication network. I can't break the encryption, but I can track the data flow." Morrison felt a spark of inspiration. During his years as an engineer, he had worked with quantum resonance systems used for deep asteroid mining. The technology was similar to what the Vorkith were using for communication. What if we could hack into their network? Morrison asked. Feed them false information about our capabilities? That's impossible, Dr. Stone said. Human technology can't interface with Vorkith systems. But Morrison was already moving to the quantum mining console, the deep space mining equipment used. Quantum entanglement to scan asteroids light years away. If he could modify the resonance frequency, he might be able to tap into the Vorkith communication network. "Helen, can you analyze the Vorkith transmission patterns?" Morrison asked. "Analyzing," the AI replied. "The enemy is using quantum entanglement communication with a base frequency of 847.2 terahertz. However, the encryption is beyond my current capabilities." Morrison's hands flew over the controls. He had spent years learning how quantum systems worked, and he could see patterns that others might miss. The Vorkith encryption was complex, but it followed logical rules. "I need more time to break their code," Morrison said. "Can we hold them off for another hour?" Billy checked the engineering displays. "We're pushing all systems past their limits. Jake, the mining lasers are overheating, and the magnetic pulse generator is drawing too much power." "Then we improvise," Morrison said. "What about the asteroid mining charges? Can we use those as weapons?" Lisa's eyes lit up. "We could set up proximity mines around the station. Let the Vorkith ships come to us." The next hour was a desperate race against time. While Morrison worked on cracking the Vorkith communication network, the rest of the crew prepared their final defensive measures. They scattered mining charges throughout the nearby asteroid field, creating a deadly maze of hidden explosives. The Vorkith fleet attacked again with overwhelming force. 20 ships charged toward the station from multiple directions, their plasma cannons lighting up space with deadly fire. But this time, they flew straight into Morrison's trap. The hidden mining charges detonated as the enemy ships passed through the asteroid field. The explosions were magnificent and terrible, turning space rocks into deadly shrapnel that tore through Vorkith hulls. Several ships were destroyed instantly, while others were crippled and left drifting. But Morrison barely noticed the successful defense. He was completely focused on the quantum communication system, his fingers dancing across controls that he had modified beyond recognition. The Vorkith encryption was starting to crack, revealing the structure of their command network. "I'm in," Morrison announced suddenly. "I can see their tactical coordination system. What can you do with it?" Lisa asked. Morrison smiled grimly. "I can make them think we're something we're not. And then I can turn their own fleet against them." The tide of battle was about to turn, but Morrison knew the most dangerous part of his plan was still to come. Morrison's fingers moved across the quantum communication console like a pianist playing a deadly song. The Vorkith network spread out before him on the display, a web of encrypted signals connecting every ship in their fleet. He could see the command structure, the tactical plans, and most importantly, the trust they placed in their secure communications. "Helen, I need you to translate these command codes, Morrison said, his eyes never leaving the screen. Working, the AI replied. Vorkith tactical language follows logical patterns. I can provide basic translations of fleet movements and target priorities. The battle raged outside while Morrison worked. The remaining Vorkith ships had regrouped and were preparing for their final assault. Through the viewports, he could see the enemy fleet forming into attack formations, their black hulls bristling with weapons. Billy's voice crackled over the intercom from engineering. Jake, we've lost 2 more mining lasers to overheating. The magnetic pulse generator is running on emergency power only. We're down to basic defensive systems. How long can we hold? Morrison asked, still focused on cracking the enemy codes. Maybe 20 minutes if we're lucky, Billy replied. After that, we won't have enough power to run the shields. Morrison felt sweat dripping down his face as he worked frantically to break deeper into the Vorkith system. The quantum resonance was giving him access, but the alien encryption was unlike anything he had ever seen. Each layer he peeled back revealed another level of security. I've got their fleet coordination protocols, Morrison announced. Helen, can you generate false tactical data that matches their communication format? Affirmative. What type of false information do you want to transmit? Morrison studied the tactical display showing the approaching Vorkith fleet. 23 ships remained, more than enough to destroy the crippled mining station. But if he could make them think the wrong things at the right moment, he might turn their strength against them. Make them think we have hidden weapons platforms throughout the asteroid field, Morrison ordered. Show massive energy signatures that look like cloaked battleships. Helen's processors worked at maximum capacity to create the false data. The Thenda AI had learned to think like a military tactician during the long battle, understanding not just what humans needed, but what enemies feared most. Dr. Stone looked up from her medical station, where she had been treating wounded crew members. Jake, Lisa's been hurt. Plasma feedback from her console burned her hands pretty badly. Morrison felt his heart sink. Lisa had been coordinating their communications and sensor data throughout the battle. Without her, they would be fighting blind against the final Vorkith assault. Can she still work? Morrison asked. She's trying, Dr. Stone replied. But her hands are shaking too much to operate the controls properly. Morrison made a quick decision. Lisa, just monitor the sensors. Call out anything important. I'll handle the communications from here. The young woman nodded weakly from her station, her bandaged hands resting on her lap. She had been one of the volunteers who stayed behind, and she was determined to keep fighting despite her injuries. The Vorkith fleet began their final approach. Morrison could see them on the tactical display, moving in perfect formation toward what they thought was a crippled mining station. They had no idea that their most dangerous enemy was sitting at a jury-rigged console, typing commands that would turn their own technology against them. Transmission ready, Helen announced. False. Tactical data prepared for injection into the Vorkith network. Send it, Morrison ordered. The quantum pulse raced across space at the speed of light, carrying Morrison's lies directly into the heart of the enemy fleet. Within seconds, every Vorkith ship received updated tactical information showing dozens of hidden human warships waiting in ambush. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The tight Vorkith formation broke apart as ships scattered to avoid the phantom threats. Captains who had been coordinating their attack began maneuvering to escape from weapons that didn't exist. It's working, Lisa called out weakly. There. Formation is falling apart, but Morrison wasn't finished. He had deeper access to their network now, and he could see individual ship systems. The Vorkith trusted their quantum communication completely, never imagining that an enemy could penetrate their most secure channels. Helen, can you access their individual ship computers through the network? Morrison asked. Attempting connection. Vorkith ships maintain quantum links to their central command systems. I can potentially access navigation, weapons, and tactical systems. Morrison felt a wild grin spread across his face. The Vorkith had built their fleet to be perfectly coordinated through quantum communication. That same coordination was now their greatest weakness. Do it, Morrison ordered. Make them see enemies where there are none. The eye went to work, sending false sensor data directly to individual Vorkith ships. Suddenly, enemy vessels began appearing on their tactical displays in impossible locations. Ships that had been allies seconds before now showed up as hostile targets. The Vorkith fleet descended into chaos. Ships that had been moving in perfect coordination began firing on each other as their computers showed friendly vessels as enemy threats. The disciplined attack formation became a confused melee of misdirected fire and panicked maneuvering. Incredible, Dr. Stone whispered as she watched the enemy fleet tear itself apart. They're shooting at their own ships. Morrison kept working, feeding more false information into the Vorkith network. He made some ships appear to be broadcasting surrender signals, while others seemed to be calling for reinforcements. The confusion spread through the fleet like a virus. Billy's voice came over the intercom again. Jake, whatever you're doing, it's working. The enemy has stopped shooting at us completely. They're too busy fighting each other. But Morrison knew the deception wouldn't last forever. Vorkith commanders would eventually realize what was happening and shut down their quantum communications. He needed to end this battle before they figured out his trick. Helen, can you access their weapon systems directly? Morrison asked, working on it. Vorkith weapons are controlled through the same quantum network. I can potentially override their targeting computers. Morrison's hands flew over the controls as he dug deeper into the enemy systems. The quantum mining equipment was never designed for this kind of work, and he could feel the strain on the machinery. Warning lights flickered across his console as the system pushed beyond its limits. The pain hit him suddenly, like lightning shooting through his brain. The quantum feedback from hacking the alien network was affecting his nervous system. His vision blurred and his hands shook as he tried to maintain the connection. Jake, are you okay? Dr. Stone called out, seeing him stumble. Keep working. Morrison gasped, fighting through the neural interference. Almost got them. He managed to access the weapon systems of 3 Vorkith dreadnoughts simultaneously. With Helen's help, he turned their plasma cannons toward their own fleet. The massive ships began firing on their companions, their own weapons used against them by human ingenuity. The Vorkith fleet was destroying itself from within. Ships that had survived the mining station's improvised defenses fell to their own allies' fire. The careful coordination that made them so dangerous became the tool of their destruction. Morrison felt another wave of quantum feedback wash over him. His nervous system couldn't handle much more of this direct interface with alien technology. Blood trickled from his nose as he fought to maintain control. Status report, he managed to say. Lisa checked her sensors with her bandaged hands. 15. Vorkith ships destroyed or disabled. 8 ships remaining, but they're retreating. Jake, you did it. You actually did it. Morrison tried to respond, but the quantum feedback finally overwhelmed his system. He collapsed at his console as the alien network rejected his human mind. The last thing he saw before unconsciousness took him was the tactical display showing the surviving Vorkith ships fleeing into hyperspace. The impossible battle was over, and somehow one human had won. Morrison woke up 3 months later in a coalition medical facility orbiting Earth. The white walls and soft lighting were a sharp contrast to the dark, cramped command center where he had fought his impossible battle. His body felt strange, like it belonged to someone else. Dr. Rachel Kim, a human neurologist, sat beside his bed reviewing medical charts. She looked up when Morrison's eyes opened and smiled with relief. "Welcome back, Commander," she said gently. "You've been unconscious for quite a while." Morrison tried to speak, but his voice came out as a whisper. Kepler Station. My crew, are they safe? Billy Carter, Lisa Park, and Dr. Stone all survived, Dr. Kim replied. They're recovering from their injuries. You saved them, Morrison. You saved everyone. Morrison closed his eyes and felt tears of relief. The faces of his fallen crew members flashed through his memory, the friends who had died defending the station in those first terrible hours. They deserved to be remembered as heroes. What happened to me? Morrison asked when he found his voice again. Dr. Kim's expression grew serious. Quantum neural syndrome. You interface directly with alien technology that human brains weren't designed to handle. The neural feedback nearly killed you. We weren't sure you would ever wake up. Over the following weeks, Morrison learned about everything that had happened since his collapse. The Battle of Kepler Station had become famous throughout Coalition space. News of one human holding off an entire Vorkith fleet had spread to every inhabited world. Admiral Zarathul visited him during his recovery. The tall Altarian brought reports from the front lines of the continuing war. Your victory changed everything, Morrison, she explained. The Vorkith had never been defeated by such a small force before. It proved they weren't invincible. It wasn't just me, Morrison said. Billy, Lisa, Alex, and all the others who died made it possible. The Admiral nodded respectfully. Their sacrifice will not be forgotten. But your tactical innovations have been studied by every military academy in Coalition space. The way you turned mining equipment into weapons, the quantum hacking techniques, the psychological warfare through their own networks, it's all being taught to new officers. Morrison felt uncomfortable with all the attention. He had never wanted to be a war hero. He had just been an engineer trying to protect his friends and the innocent people in nearby systems. Captain Rodriguez also came to visit, bringing news from the human fleet. Morrison, I have to ask you something. How did you know you could hack their quantum network? No one had ever tried anything like that before. Morrison thought carefully before answering. I didn't know if it would work, but I knew I had to try. When you're faced with impossible odds, you look for solutions that your enemy doesn't expect. And the psychological warfare, making them fight each other? Morrison smiled weakly. Humans have always been good at seeing patterns and exploiting weaknesses. The Vorkith trusted their technology completely. That trust became their downfall. As Morrison's strength returned, he began working with Coalition engineers to improve their defensive systems. His experience with improvised weapons and quantum hacking had given him insights that traditional military thinking had missed. The most important development was the new early warning network. By studying how Morrison had penetrated Vorkith communications, Coalition scientists developed quantum detection systems that could identify enemy fleets before they attacked. Morrison also helped design new defensive platforms for civilian stations. Mining equipment was modified with his improvements and installed throughout human space. Asteroid mining colonies that had once been helpless targets became formidable defensive positions. But the real change was in how the galaxy viewed humanity. The other Coalition species had always seen humans as useful allies, but not particularly special. The Battle of Kepler Station changed that perception completely. Dr. Yeshtar, a prominent Altarian military theorist, published a paper called The Human Factor in Modern Warfare. The document analyzed Morrison's tactics and concluded that human creativity and adaptability made them uniquely suited for impossible situations. Humans refuse to accept defeat even when logic says they should surrender, the paper stated. This psychological trait, combined with their ability to improvise solutions from available resources, makes them extremely dangerous opponents. The Vorkith themselves seem to have learned this lesson. Their attacks on human settlements decreased dramatically after Kepler Station. Intelligence reports suggested they were avoiding direct confrontations with human defenders whenever possible. 6 months after waking up, Morrison was finally cleared for limited duty. The quantum neural damage had healed, but doctors warned him to avoid direct interface with alien technology. His brain had adapted to the foreign systems, but another exposure could be fatal. Morrison's first assignment was training new defensive specialists at the Coalition Military Academy on Mars. He found himself standing in front of classrooms full of young officers from dozens of different species, all eager to learn the secrets of the Kepler station defense. "The most important thing to understand," Morrison told his students, "is that every problem has a solution. You just have to be willing to think beyond normal methods." A young human cadet raised her hand. "Sir, what do you do when the enemy has overwhelming technological superiority?" Morrison smiled, remembering his own doubts during those desperate hours. "You find ways to make their strength work against them. Superior technology often means greater complexity, and complexity creates vulnerabilities." An Altarian student asked the next question. "Commander Morrison, how do you maintain hope when facing impossible odds?" Morrison paused, thinking of Billy, Lisa, Alex, and all the others who had fought beside him. "You remember what you're fighting for. It's not about winning or losing. It's about protecting the people who can't protect themselves." The lectures continued for months, but Morrison knew that teaching tactics was only part of the lesson. The real message was about human nature itself, the refusal to give up, the ability to find hope in darkness, and the willingness to sacrifice everything for others. A year after the battle, Morrison received an invitation to return to Kepler Station. The facility had been rebuilt as both a memorial and a training center. The command center where he had made his stand was preserved exactly as it had been during the battle. Morrison stood in the rebuilt space, looking at the jury-rigged equipment and empty coffee containers that had been left untouched. A simple plaque on the wall read, "Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison held this line. He refused to lose." Billy Carter, now fully recovered, joined him in the Memorial Command Center. "Strange being back here, isn't it, boss?" Morrison nodded. "Sometimes I can't believe we actually survived. You know what the real miracle was?" Billy asked. "It wasn't the weapons or the hacking. It was that you never stopped believing we could win." Morrison looked out at the stars through the viewport. Somewhere out there, the war continued. But now the galaxy knew that humans would fight for every inch, that they would find solutions where none seemed to exist, and that they would never abandon their posts. Young officers from across Coalition space came to train at Kepler Station, learning not just tactics, but the spirit that made such victories possible. They learned that one person really could make a difference, that impossible odds were just another problem to solve, and that sometimes the most important victory was simply refusing to lose. Morrison stayed at the station as its commander, training the next generation of defenders. When new cadets asked him about the secret to holding impossible positions, he would point to the stars and give them the same answer he had given Captain Rodriguez so long ago. "Out there are people depending on us. As long as we remember that, we'll never truly lose." The Vorkith War continued, but the galaxy had learned an important lesson. When humans held the line, they held it absolutely. And that made all the difference.